Hello, YouTube watchers. I wanted to do a quick follow-up to my last video, which I suspected might be divisive, hence my title, Unpopular Opinion. There were a lot of great points made in the comments section, and I thought I would share and discuss some of them with this community. Also, I should remind you that this is for entertainment purposes only, and is my interpretation of the data and what I think could be alternative explanations for certain events, and whether any of the data could be considered strong evidence or proof that Nichol killed two preschoolers. It's a very interesting case, and 3 years later, we're still looking for answers and explanations, which nobody but Chris will ever know. And there were a couple of comments that were flagged and held for review by YouTube Studio due to their content. And I can't believe I have to say this, but I have no affiliation with Nichol Kessinger in any way. And I say this because some comments that got flagged suggested I put the previous videos together on her behalf or with her involvement. One even suggested I was Nichol, which I think is the wildest theory yet. Nowhere in my video, and I need to make this clear, did I proclaim Nichol's innocence or guilt. I'm just breaking down some of the data points people are using to say, aha, she searched for wedding dresses, therefore she's a baby killer. And if she were charged and these points were presented as evidence at her trial, I would say they would cause a great deal of reasonable doubt. If I were on the jury, that is. Anyhow, as I said, there were a lot of great comments about the pinging of Nichol's phone in Frederick on the morning of the murders. We don't know what may have transpired during the 111-minute phone call between herself and Chris Watts that ended around 11 p.m. the night before the murders. Nichol says she can't remember what they talked about, but I can remember what a general conversation I had on a 30-minute phone call a month ago with certain individuals. And this would be especially true if it were with someone that I was romantically obsessed with, which she was at the time. I imagine he was probably promising her the earth and the moon and telling her that the divorce was going down and it was only a matter of time and to be patient. So her phone pinged at 6:16 a.m. in Frederick. I created a different map to show more precisely where Nichol lived, where Chris lived, and where Anadarko was located. The Watts house was right off the highway, which Nichol would likely have taken to get to work. A few comments pointed out that it was odd that there was no ping in Frederick anywhere else on her Verizon statement, but that was about 3 or 4 weeks of data that they were referencing. We don't know what her phone bill looked in the months prior. Her phone could very well have pinged off that tower previously. And I came across a very interesting article from the New Yorker where a woman was convicted of a crime based off of cell phone tower pings. And let me read the article for you. The article is titled, "What Your Cell Phone Can't Tell Police." On May 28th, Lisa Marie Roberts of Portland, Oregon, was released from prison after serving 9.5 years for a murder she didn't commit. A key piece of overturned evidence was cell phone records that allegedly put her at the scene of the crime. And then later in the article, it goes on to say, the switching center determines the destination of your call and connects to the landlines that will take it to the cell towers near the destination. Almost simultaneously, the software decides which of the half a dozen towers in your area you'll likely connect with. The selection is determined by load management software that incorporates dozens of factors, including signal strength, atmospheric conditions, and maintenance schedules. The system is so fluid that you could sit at your desk, make 5 successive cell calls, and connect to 5 different towers. During a conversation, your signal can be switched from one tower to the next. You'll also be handed off to another tower if you travel outside your coverage area while you're speaking, or if you travel outside your coverage area while you're speaking. Designated for business and not tracking. Call detail records provide the kind of information that helps cell companies manage their networks, not track phones. This reminds me of something I experienced when I was trying to figure out why the internet signal was suddenly so inconsistent at a vacation property I stayed at. I called the internet provider and they noted some construction in the area that was interfering with the signal. I was then told to reposition my antenna towards the north so it could consistently connect to the unaffected cell tower. Another comment made about my theory about Nichol being curious and doing a drive-by to catch a glimpse of Chris's family. The watcher said 6:16 a.m. was way too early to catch a glimpse of them. And I thought, yeah, you've got a point there. But then I remembered all of Shannon's Facebook posts about being up and about at 6 a.m. and getting the girls off to Primrose School, which opens at 6:30 a.m. But if she did do a drive-by, that leads to another question. Why was there no mention of her vehicle being seen on the neighbor's security camera, which would capture any vehicle driving past the house? Usually those home devices that are activated by motion would have at least a week's worth of stored data. What about the Watts Vivint doorbell recorder? That also would have shown her going into the house. Any activity or changes in the settings would have been recorded, and this data was collected by investigators. Police surely would have exhausted their analysis of this data, in my opinion. The next point that was brought up was the wedding dress search, and that it came days before a search for marrying your mistress. Now, Nichol had just turned 30 and probably very much had marriage on her mind. Some of you may not be able to relate, but I know many young women who would doodle their names with the name of the crush they had at the moment. And early on in relationships, there's a lot of fantasy. You don't really know who the person is that well, and you project onto them who you want them to be and how they might fit into your life. But the majority of these relationships fizzle fast after the initial honeymoon phase, which is what Nichol and Chris were on. And I'm sure, contrary to her saying that she encouraged him to fix his relationship with his wife, she was most probably pressing him to make his divorce final and get his own apartment before they went any further, because as long as he was living with his wife, he was not free to marry his mistress. So my point being, I just don't see the connection between these two searches and her involvement in the murder of Chris's family. And I mean her personal involvement. When Chris and Nichol spoke on August 11th, he was telling her it would be difficult for him to come up with $1,100 to rent his own place. Sounds like a real winner to me, and I don't know if I would want to kill for some guy who was drowning in debt. Finally, there's the 2017 search for Shannon by Nichol. One of the investigators, an officer named Amanda Purcell, who was the records supervisor, when questioned about the date, she said it was a typographical error. And to be clear, there were many, many typos throughout the discovery documents. So could the search have actually happened in 2018 instead? It makes sense to me that she was still very much the subject of interest and being investigated well into September of 2018. And Nichol met with investigators on September 4th. And I present the following document here, where once again, the investigator notes taking custody of her iPhone 6 and placing it into evidence after it had initially been returned in August. And any of you who have two cell phones know that your cell phone can still connect to the internet through Wi-Fi and be used to do online searches without a SIM card. But let's say, in fact, that she did do a search of Shannon in 2017. What does that tell us? Both women seemed very outgoing. Could they have met randomly and struck up a conversation about health and fitness somewhere? Maybe Shannon gave her the little spiel on Thrive and maybe told her to join a Facebook Live call she was hosting, possibly. And let's say she saw pictures of Chris during her search. Prior to fall 2017, she would have been seeing dad bod Chris, who by all accounts appeared to be happily married based on Shannon's photos and comments. I found that social media has made the world much smaller, where the whole Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of separation has easily been replaced with 2 degrees of separation, which I've discovered in my own life. Very odd connections between people that resurface months or years later. So I'm going to end this video in much the same way I ended the last video. Did the so-called mistress do some questionable things? It appears so, but again, that's for an upcoming video. And again, thank you for those who did comment and that did so respectfully and thoughtfully. I enjoyed the discussion, and watchers did provide some viewpoints that had me really rethink my previous opinions. So if you do want to be notified of upcoming videos, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Thanks for watching.